Drug trade is going online. People are increasingly turning to these darknet encrypted online drug markets in order to procure drugs of any sort.
Our research is looking at an online illegal dark web network. These drugs are shipped through the local postal service, and they arrive at your doorstep within 2 days of making that transaction.
7 years ago, when these markets first arrived, the very first market at its height was bringing in about $200,000 in annual revenue. Nowadays, the biggest markets are bringing in about $180 million in U.S. revenue.
All the information you have on a vendor is in their profile page, and it also includes this cumulative reputation score. And you can go back through and you can look at every single transaction that occurred with this particular vendor and see what the buyer said about that transaction. How did they rate it?
We partnered with some faculty and graduate students at Ohio State University's Computer Science Department, and they designed web scrapers for us that'll actually go online to the darknet, pull down all this information. Now, once we have that data, what we're able to do is recreate the entire model of the market, where on one hand we have the vendors, on the other hand we have the buyers, and we're able to map out all the connections between them.
We're able to determine, what do buyers look for? How do they choose? So the findings that are emerging from our study show that trust is the most important factor sustaining these networks. Vendors present themselves in such a way to convey that they are trustworthy.
There's the risk of scamming. Is somebody going to take my money and run? And the other risk, of course, is, are they actually going to get the drugs they buy? If they get a drug that's more potent than what they expect, then the risk of overdose and death is potentially very high.
One of the more effective ways we think that you could manipulate this network is by targeting this trust.
We ran these simulation approaches to evaluate the efficacy of arrest, and what we find is that arrest really doesn't work that well.
In fact, our simulations show that you would have to remove about 40% of the active vendors to really dismantle that network.
It should be less about targeting specific vendors and more about essentially introducing chaos into the market itself.
Any ways you can think of to minimize the trustworthiness of these particular vendors is going to have a direct effect and really reduce their customer bases.
There's many message boards that darknet users will use to talk about drugs, talk about vendors. Some law enforcement agencies have begun trying to undermine vendors' reputation through these message boards. If buyers can't actually evaluate the veracity of a vendor's products, identify how trustworthy a vendor is, then they're going to be less and less likely to actually select them for purchasing. So we think trust-oriented policing, undermining the trust in the network, is probably the biggest policy recommendation we can offer.